Hello and welcome back to another video. I just want to have a chat today because, I'm never really filming when I feel like filming, and I always save like the thoughts that I have about books for wrap-ups, but then the wrap-ups get so extensively long that I don't want to post them either, so I'm just gonna do this. It's without structure and you will notice that throughout this whole video, so I'm sorry in advance. But I read Colleen Hoover. I read Varity, and I finished it yesterday. This is my copy that I got from the library, but I read it through audiobook, so I listened to it rather than read it. Now, my relationship with Colleen Hoover is that I have none. This is my first ever book of Colleen Hoover, and I know she is an author that gets a lot of controversial reviews. So either people love or hate her. There are people that are obsessed with her books that can't stop reading them, and there are people who just hate everything about the idea of reading a Colleen Hoover book or everything she puts in there. I don't want to comment on any of that. Let me just say that the bubble of reviewers that I follow mostly tend to hate on Colleen Hoover, or at least like not enjoy her books or the topics of her books. So I saw Varity a lot of times on social media and also in my bookstore, and then I saw it in my library and I was like, you know what, maybe it's the time. Maybe it's the time for me to finally try and read a Colleen Hoover, make my own mind up about it. And I picked Varity because I think it has a beautiful cover. Not gonna lie, I'm a very huge fan of the combination of blue and pink. This is why my end screen looks like that. This is why my background sometimes looks like that. So if I would have seen any other version of the cover than this, I wouldn't have picked it up. But I did, and here's my review. Ultimately, I just from the get-go want to say that I enjoyed it. I wouldn't have ever thought so, but I really enjoyed it. And I gave it an 8 out of 10. Varity, if you don't know, is a book about an author that gets offered to continue a thriller series by another author who recently had an accident and therefore it wasn't able or isn't able to continue the story. And now she's like offered to continue it for her. And in the story we have three main people. We have Lowen, Jeremy, I hope that this is their names. I completely forgot already. It's been like, I finished it yesterday. And then we have Varity, of which Lowen and Jeremy interact with each other the most, and then Varity, who is like impaired and can't really do anything. I didn't like the characters at all. They were not up my alley. I thought that they were really flat, and the beginning was, I don't want to say weak, but I kind of also want to say weak. If you have seen any of my other videos, I'm not a huge fan of romances, and one of the issues, that I have sometimes with love and love interests and people falling in love with each other is that the exterior characteristics of a person are sometimes the entire reason for a person falling in love. So we have Lowen, who feels attracted to Jeremy, and this is kind of, this is something to bring in the tension or this sort of triangle situation or forbidden love kind of thing, where you have like this husband of an ill woman you shouldn't desire, but you still do, and stuff like that. But all that she's ever mentioned about him in her thoughts, in the beginning, after that when she gets to know him, it gets better, but in the beginning it's like, oh my god, he's just so handsome, he's so good looking, I wonder if I will like be enough for this man. And that's just something that is not enough for me. If you fall in love with a person, give me something more than looks. And I've recently had that with a Ruth Ware, which I also maybe will do a video on. It's currently in editing. I don't know if it ever will get released, but who knows. I had that with a Ruth Ware, where the only thing that the character liked were the looks of the man that she utterly loved. And I just don't understand. I don't understand. Like, don't you have conversations? Isn't there something he said that made you horny or something? Like, what the hell? Are we that superficial? But later on he gets a little bit of depth, you know, like we get to see him interact with his kids, so you see that he's great with them, you see him like being really caring for Varity. I know it fleshes him out a bit, still not enough in my opinion to fall in love with him, but I feel like this is a scenario where in the future the character would look back on this situation and say it was like love at first sight or something. Now aside from that, let me just address a thing that I, after reading this book, heard from some other people that I follow and that have reviewed her books before, and that is that sometimes abuse or sexual assault can be an issue in Colleen Hoover books because it's portrayed as something that is okay, in a way of the character letting it happen to them and then they end up happily. So I get that criticism. I think it's very important to talk about that. However, I wanted to address it because I just want to note that, in my opinion, I hope that I haven't misread it or misheard it because I, as I said, listened to the audio version. In my opinion, there was no sexual assault. Every party that had sex in this book was agreeing to it. They were aware of what they were doing. They were having fun while doing it. And well, while we're at the topic, there's a lot of sex in this book. I didn't know that Colleen Hoover apparently is known for putting in very detailed and graphic sex scenes in her book. I got to experience that firsthand. And normally this is something that I would criticize because I personally often find it cringy and like a little bit misplaced. But in this case, oftentimes when sex scenes were described, it was from the perspective of a sex-craving person. So it really fit the character. So that made me not mind it as much and not like kind of being okay with it, being like seeing the purpose in the scenes itself, like in establishing that this person's focus is all about sex. Colleen Hoover apparently is also a person that writes a lot of domestic abuse and like writes protagonists with very low self-esteem who then often get their boundaries pushed or even like crossed. And I don't think that this is the case in this book. However, it's a thriller. There are unnerving scenes. I'm gonna put some trigger warnings very like in my info box on the bottom below if you're interested. But I would also advise you to go on like this book rating app, I forgot its name, because you can look up trigger warnings for the individual books because my list is not exhaustive. So if you're interested in that, just you can scroll down or go on this app, look it up. Now the thing about this book, because up until now I feel like I have kind of not really given a very positive opinion, or at least like a middle ground one, but the thing that kind of made this book outstanding to me was the reason that the underlying theme is one that I really enjoy. I honestly deeply enjoy discussions about the craft of being a writer in books, and in that sense this book was a little bit meta to me because you have an author talking about other authors, talking about their writing. And I can only a little bit, not in the same vein, not at all, and also not comparable actually, but I can only compare it a bit to Misery. Misery is the book that I found to be phenomenal and did the same thing in the sense of setting up this relationship between reader and writer, talking about the writing industry, talking about like the expectations of readers and the feelings of authors and the thoughts and the writing process, and then like that's something I'm all up for. And I feel like Varity just, you know, poked into a hole for me with that. So what I enjoyed ultimately the most about this book is definitely the implications that it came with. It was just a topic that was totally right for me. Also, and this is something I really enjoy in my thrillers and in my horror books, this was a book for me that when I closed the lid, like the last few words and sentences were like slowly trickling into my brains and I was kind of making sense of them. And everything that I imagine is just uncomfortable. That just sends chills down my spine. That is my most favorite feeling of uncomfortableness. This is why Varity ultimately worked for me. Does that mean I'm going to pick up another Colleen Hoover as soon as I get my hands on one? No. I am like still skeptical about her. I still have the other reviews in mind, and it's not only the reviews that I have read previously or seen or listened to previously, it's also the fact that, to be 100% honest, I don't think her writing is that good. If her other books are as character-based as I'm thinking them to be, then I will have an issue probably. Because sex scenes alone don't make up a great book for me. But you know, it's not completely off of the table that I will ever pick up a Colleen Hoover again. So here we are, this is my review. I'm sorry for being that rambly, I just had to get my thoughts out of here and put them into the world and maybe get some other thoughts. So let me hear what you think. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you at another time in another video.